Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Triple N Media. I am Dr. Nik Nikam. We are coming to you live from Houston, Texas. I have a very special guest from India today, and I'd like to introduce Sanjeev Sanyal.
Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you. He was born in Calcutta. That's what I would say, but they call it differently now.
Kolkata, yeah, that's the
Kolkata.
actual present,
Yeah.
in native pronunciation.
Yeah, Calcutta, and he graduated from Delhi University, and he's an Oxford Rhodes Scholar. He has worn many hats, just like me, and he's a best-selling author, urban theorist, environmentalist. In the last 2 decades, he worked as the chief economist for the South Asian division of the Deutsche Bank, and later principal economic advisor to the Indian Prime Minister, Indian government, and delighted to have you. And he also has been a prolific writer. He's written books like Land of Seven Rivers, Ocean of Churn, and which he's blend with the history, geography, culture, and he gave an excellent presentation on government efficiency, would I say, yesterday, which was a topic which was similar to Doge, but hopefully maybe he was getting a better reception than Elon Musk getting here in the United States. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start off. We'd like to first of all welcome Sanjeev Sanyal to Houston and also to our Triple N Media. Let's start off with, for those Indians who have been living in the United States, and I've been here more than 40 years, give us an update on what are the challenges that the Indian government is facing economically.
So, as many of you are aware,
Yeah.
the Indian economy came out of the COVID downturn quite strongly. It's been for the last several years the world's fastest growing economy. This year, it will match the size of Japan. And in the next 18 odd months, it will go past Germany to become the world's third largest economy. So and even after that, it's likely to remain the world's fastest growing economy. So in that sense, it's growing very fast. There are obviously many challenges, not the least that there's a lot of turbulence globally happening, as you know, because of the tariff wars between China and the US. But we are well placed. The domestic economy is strong. The banks have all got cleaned up over the last few years. We probably have the best, most profitable banking system in the world. There are many parts of the economy, like the services economy, that are doing well. So, there's always challenges, but all told, the economy is in good shape.
You think the industrial production or manufacturing has kind of leveled off, or is it slowed down?
The manufacturing has leveled off a little bit, but by and large, it has kept up with the economy. You have to remember that the economy is growing very rapidly.
Yes.
So even if the share of GDP is flat, it does mean that the industrial sector is still growing very fast, much faster than, say, in the US.
Yeah. What's the reason for a progressive decline in the GDP?
There's been no progressive decline in GDP. I mean, our economy is now growing, the fastest growing economy in the world by some margin. This year we will also grow at 6.5 to 7%. This is despite all the turbulence in the world.
Yeah.
And if we get into a situation where things are more stable, we'll easily grow at 8%.
Okay. Maybe you can talk about some of the initiatives put in place by Prime Minister Modi to address some of the things we talked.
So obviously, one of the things we have facing is that the global trading system is breaking down. In this context, let me say that we have not been directly so much affected by the tariff war as many other countries. 2/3 of our exports to the US are in services, which are not being tariffed. And even of the 1/3 that is merchandise, it's things like pharmaceuticals and mobile phones and things like that, which have also not been affected to the same extent. So effectively, what's happening is that we are so far not very badly affected. We are also looking to sign a free trade agreement with many countries, including the US, UK, and others over the next 12 months. So we are reasonably well placed to take advantage of whatever new world emerges out of this.
What about tax cuts and deregulations?
So we have done some tax cuts. A few years ago, we radically lowered our corporate tax rates, and this year We lowered our income tax rates as well. So there's no tax on incomes up to 12 lakhs a year. So per month, if you earn a lakh, don't have to pay income tax at all. Which is in that way, we have reduced taxes quite substantially in recent years.
How about inflation compared to United States or European
so I don't know about
countries?
I don't know what US inflation is, but right now Indian
it's about 3.2%.
So Indian inflation is about the same. It's about 3.5 if you take the consumer rate, and it's about 2% if you take the wholesale rate.
What about the interest rate?
So interest rates in India are very high, even today. But if our inflation stays here, our interest rates over time will systematically come down. But that is a longer term thing. For the time being, interest rates will remain.
It's around 4.2, 4.4%.
No, so Indian interest rates are much higher than that. You know, for example, the government borrows at 6.5 or something like that, 10-year money. So it is significantly higher than US interest rates. But if inflation remains anchored, which it has been, over time these interest rates will come down.
What about the deficit?
So the central government's so this year the central government's fiscal deficit will be about 4.5% of GDP. For a country growing at our speed, that is very, very conservative and well within limits, because remember, our debt to GDP ratio is declining. It's much lower than the US, for example.
Definitely, I was looking at it. And what about some long-term vision from the Prime Minister Modi's government?
So basically, as I said, in the next 18 odd months, we will go past Germany to become the world's third largest economy. But the idea is to retain high growth over long periods of time. So not just about this year or next year, but about next 20 odd years, we need to be a high growth economy, right? So in that context, what we need is to be able to keep investing in infrastructure, make sure our trade export markets are open for us, including the US. So that's why the free trade agreement is something we take quite seriously. And keep deregulating and doing business in India better.
That's good. Let's switch gears and talk about the international global trade. You know, I left India in the 80s, but I always wondered why India has not made much progress in terms of getting a bigger pie of the international consumer market.
So actually, while we are not as successful as China, let me say that all your gadgets are full of Indian software. And your iPhone is quite possibly also made in India. And there are many, many things that you use which are India made. In fact, American president is complaining that our trade surplus with the US is too large. So you know, I don't know what you're complaining about, but your president is complaining that we export too much.
Well, he's complaining about 180 other countries too. That the tariffs. I mean, the international trade has had a significant imbalance, and we'll come to that. One of my major concerns is India has a significant trade deficit with China.
That is
if
true.
we are going to compete, if India is going to compete with the international market for the world consumer, how does it help India to have like a $90 billion trade deficit with China?
So obviously, for example, we are the second largest producer of iPhones in the world. Now, many of those.
Hopefully, I would like to see it number one.
Well, it'll take time. We are growing much faster than China, but today we are not. But many of those inputs.
How long did it take to get iPhone to produce like, I don't know, 1.6 million iPhones or something, which was airlifted before the tariffs went into effect?
So it's only in the last 3 years that we have become a major player in electronics. Before that, we were not a major player in electronics. So this is quite new, but we are quite significant already, as you can see. But the inputs for that come from China for now. Similarly, we are the world's largest producer of pharmaceuticals by some margin. But again, inputs for that come from China. We export to the world, but the inputs have come so far from China.
One of the biggest analysis, where a communist country is controlling almost the rest of the world when it comes to supply chain.
No, absolutely. This is an issue to us as well. But on the other hand, we cannot wish them away. The fact of the matter is they are major source of all kinds of raw
What would
materials
it
that
take
we
for-
also use. So
What would it take for India to get into this supply chain?
So look, it would require, as I said, if the world, as the Americans are trying to do, converting a parallel supply chain,
Yeah.
then we would like to be a part of that, which is what the free trade agreement is about. And then in that space, we would be able to scale up quite rapidly because we would presumably have protected markets in which we can expand. But that is to be seen.
But how would India be able to reach a stage where maybe it doesn't have to depend on China for
No, but
some of its raw materials?
it will require time.
It says that the American fighter jets have chips which are made in China, and that's a major national security
So of
concern.
course this is an issue. We are in fact in some ways less dependent on China because we did not join RCEP.
Yeah.
Even in the things that we do import, we have some local production, which is not the case in America in many things. So in that sense, we are a little better. There are many things that we could, in theory, ramp up, but it does require that for some time, while we scale them up, we have partner countries where we can export, where they have also protected those markets away from China. So hence, whether the European Union or US or UK and our own domestic market, which is, as I said, not small, these have to be for some time protected. But we need to be a little careful about this. If you protect markets for too long, they become inefficient and
you get isolated.
They get isolated, they get inefficient. And also the fact is that, while the US may be having a tariff war, we are not having a tariff war with China. So there is no reason why we should
but still,
we should completely try and unlink ourselves from
what
China.
What would it take for like India over several maybe years and decades to become independent? Maybe
look, we live in a complex world. We are never going to be independent, and neither do we care to be
independent.
So we are not trying to become independent of China.
Like Taiwan or South Korea.
No, so look, you have to understand the things that we are importing from China. We could, in theory, over time build.
Yes.
The stuff that comes from Taiwan and so on, for example, TSMC and other Taiwanese companies are now shifting a lot of production to India. The Koreans have already had for a long time large production capabilities in India in automobiles and cell phones and so on. Samsung's largest cell phone manufacturing unit in the world is in Noida. So we already have very large production capabilities. They are small by Chinese standards, but they are not small by any other standard.
I mean, we have the manpower, we have the labor force, and it's a matter of just maybe getting one step at a time.
Yes, so we are seeing a lot of capacities being built. India has gone from having almost no defense exports to becoming a fairly significant defense exports just in the last 3 years. So there are many things that are happening.
Okay, let's now turn to the tariff war going on, and what is your take on what Trump is expecting from India, and maybe give you a personal perspective, not necessarily the government.
So let me say that this turbulence you're seeing in some ways should be expected. Because at some point, a incumbent power will push back against a rising power like China. So in the past there have been world wars because of these kinds of transitions. So whatever we are seeing, orders it may.
It's an economic war, I would say.
Yeah, it's maybe an economic war, but it's nothing yet like a real war.
I know.
So having said
it may get into, because in the next few weeks we'll see, how far the escalation goes. But I watch news from all over the world, including Chinese stations and all this, and they are in terrible shape in terms of.
No, so that is their problem. Let me tell you from an Indian
Yes.
perspective, we expected some sort of a dislocation because at some point the Americans would respond. And that point has now been reached. Now, during this disruption, there will be turbulence. And we can expect, I don't expect this to go away for some time, by the way. But the question is, what is the cost to us and what are the opportunities for us?
But that's why I look at it more from an opportunity point of view for India especially.
Of course, it's an opportunity, but we have to make it work. So we will see how this works out, because this is a fluid situation. It's difficult to give hard predictions. But let me say that so far, I said this before as well, our exports are not heavily being impacted.
Okay, let's get like pharmaceutical, because I'm a doctor, so I know India is a very large, I don't know if it's the largest producer
It
of
is the largest
generic pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
What it takes for them to establish factories here in the United States?
So we will see how that goes, but we will be, of course, a major
this
producer.
is the greatest opportunity.
We will see how this works out. We will have to see how this evolves, because there are, for example, we are happy to export to the US, but there are many APIs which still come from China.
Yeah.
So either the US has to produce it or we have to produce. Somebody has between us has to produce those chemicals that are inputs into those generics. Yeah. So if the Americans do it, great. Otherwise, we will do it, and the Americans will have to then.
See, that's why it looks like China controls everybody's oxygen.
No. So of course, at some point, alliances will have to be built in many fields.
Yeah.
I keep giving the example of shipping industry, where China dominates 60% of the world shipbuilding.
In fact, Trump started putting 1 to 1.5 million tariffs on ships coming.
Yes, so they have done all these things, but the fact of the matter, it takes time to build ships, and the American shipbuilding industry is simply not capable of building those kinds. The number of ships needed.
They were when the military.
But you see, military ships is small market. The real market is the commercial market, and America, for any reasonable time horizon, will not be able to build.
Yeah.
The only country in the world that can possibly build the ships that America needs is India. See, because basically shipbuilding is a very labor-intensive activity. It's basically millions of hours of welding. That's basically what shipbuilding is. And there is only one country in the world which has the coastline, it has the manpower, it has the steel. America doesn't even have the steel. We have the steel. We also have the technology. So, people don't realize this. India builds its own nuclear submarines, builds its own aircraft carriers. So we can certainly build tankers. So, and then of course there's the Japanese who.
Is India collaborating with the United States?
Not right now, because you don't have anything to collaborate with.
I see. Yeah.
So we are collaborating with the Japanese and the Koreans who do have a shipbuilding industry. If the Americans begin to build one out, we would like to collaborate in it.
Trump is talking about bringing the shipping industry back.
So maybe he will do some part of it, but he will not be able to do it in a large scale. It's not possible because you don't have the young men.
I certainly agree with you, because as much as Trump wants to see manufacturing come to this country, it may not happen in terms of human labor, maybe robotics and something which Scott Bessent keeps talking about. But still, you have to get some of this stuff from outside.
Some other country. And India is an obvious place to do it.
So what is your crystal ball saying that, how much business can India grab in this turmoil?
So as I said, this is a fluid situation, so I can't predict it. Nobody can predict it.
But like pharmaceutical industry, certainly there is.
We are already a big player, so this is not something we are grabbing from China. We are the dominant player in this particular space.
So, what kind of terms would you like to see from the United States? I certainly don't agree with taking the trade deficit and converting that into tariffs.
Whatever it may be the case, he has done it in that way. But as I said, it is not a major problem to us right now. It may be in the future, but so far, our exports, there are a few segments where the impact will be, but overall the impact will be muted. And so we see it as some turbulence, but we are not yet in a position where we are, finding it too difficult.
So, in the final analysis, do you think India would benefit from Trump trying to get as much?
Well, potentially yes. But as I said, it's potentially, because we don't know how. It's a long-term thing, because as I said, supposing you do bring manufacturing back in the US, and how are you going to? You will have to redeploy people who are today in services into that activity. In which case, you will have to outsource even further to India. Your services part of the manufacturing chain, or your logistics and or shipbuilding or some such thing. So it will only work as a partnership. It will not work on its own.
In fact, like Tim Cook said, he was going to invest $500 billion here in the United States. Basically, maybe they can just assemble the components like Tesla or anything else, because everything else is made outside the country. And so I think there's a great opportunity. I personally feel for India, and I particularly would like to see India get into manufacturing, and so we are less dependent on China, or
Right.
maybe even move some of the dependence to other countries. Let's see. Oh, tell us about your project that you presented yesterday about government efficiency as it is called here.
So we have now for some years had a major effort to do government efficiency efforts, and we call them process reforms. But we have done it in a different way from what is being done in America. So it's a slower process.
Yeah.
So it's more like attrition warfare rather than blitzkrieg. But we have gone literally department by department, looked at what are the inefficient departments, shut some of them down, looked at processes, improved them, changed the rules, changed regulations. There are literally hundreds of rules and outdated laws we have got rid of. So in doing that, some efficiency gains are happening. I mean, there's growth.
Yes.
The sustained growth that you're seeing from India is coming from these reforms that we are doing. But we have done it in a different way from what Elon Musk is doing. We are doing it in a much more slower pace. But hopefully, our view is that this is a marathon; it's not a sprint.
I know, but the problem in the United States is that if an opposing party doesn't like you, they don't like anything you do. So
no, that is true of politics
yeah.
everywhere. That is even true of India. But we have done it in a particular way.
Yeah.
As I said, may or may not be applicable to America, but it works better in our system.
Yeah, I was watching one of your interviews, and based on the topic of Doge, you had a different perspective on U.S. aid story that was circulating in India, the $21 billion or
No. So I mean,
$1
personally, I'm quite happy that US aid was shut down. Most
Yeah.
of that money was not used for,
Yeah.
it was US taxpayer money, but not used, unfortunately, for anything good on the ground, I can assure you. It may be the odd thing that did well, but most of it was used for various kinds of lobbying or political interference and things, not just in India, worldwide.
Yeah, I know.
Whether the regime change in Bangladesh or
Yes.
other places, all of this was done with US aid and other such money. And I've been saying this for many years. So am I unhappy about the shutting down of US aid? Absolutely not. I'm rather happy about it.
And you also were making a comment that all this US aid and their statistics are setting the foundation for all these future search engines and all this.
No. So basically, it's a lot of it is used for manipulation.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
So you'll have all kinds of indices and other things created through think tanks and all kinds of narrative manipulation.
Yes.
So all of this money, by the way, which is said to be aid, is not used for actually helping people in those countries.
I see.
But for political interference. And therefore, most countries are not unhappy. So all this money was supposedly going to developing countries to help them.
I know, for helping humanity.
Yes, but in most of those countries are very happy that US aid is gone.
I see. Yeah, that's good.
And so we have, if this is going to US taxpayers, do remember that, please use your money to improve your infrastructure and so on. Please don't interfere, send this money, because this money doesn't get used for things that they tell you it's getting used for.
Yeah, I know. It's
mostly diverted for other uses.
I mean, it's happening. See, that's one of the biggest contentions from Trump's administration, that all the $65 billion that's been allocated to US aid, it's all going to places where it is not.
No, just to give you an example, $21 million was spent in India last year to improve Indian voter turnout.
Yeah.
Now, let me just tell you,
India. That an interference in
that is for, not only is it interference, it's absurd.
Yeah.
India's voter turnout is much higher than American voter turnout. If you really want to spend money on voter turnout, spend it in America.
I know, they don't want voter ID and all these things, but that's a different story. And let's see, we all buying from China, but when it comes to labor laws, environmental laws, and all these things, they absolutely have violated everything that's humanly possible on the face of the earth. How would the India and the Western world can accept this? They drove away slavery from the United States. Now we are, almost so dependent on the foreign.
So look, we are also not very keen on interfering with the internal politics of China. So let me be very, very clear. I personally am quite skeptical about things like ESG
Yes.
and so on, because typically they have been used as non-tariff barriers by by the European Union, for example. So while I have every interest in environmental protection and so on, I believe that to the large extent it should be left to authorities on the ground and not being interfered with from outside.
I see. Yeah. Thank you very much. How has your visit to Houston has been, and what have you picked up new during
No,
this
it was
visit?
quite interesting. I went to the Tagore Memorial yesterday, gave a talk. Yeah, I met a lot of interesting people. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
I wanted to give you a copy of. I'm a cardiologist by profession.
Okay.
A copy of my
Okay. Thank you
comedy
so much.
clips collected from talking to patients over 40 years.
Okay.
Hopefully, when you're flying, if you
Okay.
get bored,
All right.
it's a
Thank
nice
you.
place to look
I
at
will
it.
definitely
And
have a look at it.
yeah,
Thanks so much.
Sanjeev Sanyal, it's a pleasure talking to you. It's been a great honor to have you on our Triple N video. We're delighted, and you're going back to India soon, or?
Yes, in a few hours.
Oh, I see. Have a nice trip, and I will see you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, please. Thank
All right.
you.
All right. Bye bye.